What's up YouTube, it's Big Fish here with another reaction video. We're here with MSNBC today and they're going to be talking about Trump during the takeover DC. Now we know Big Balls got assaulted while he was trying to help a lady and Trump was not happy about that. But we know crime and homelessness in DC is one of the highest as well. Let's hear what they have to say.
But we have to get to our top story tonight, which is Donald Trump fear-mongering about crime and homelessness in the nation's capital. The president put out an unhinged and inaccurate post earlier today on his social media site. He teased a press conference coming at the White House tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., where he's set to make some sort of announcement and threatened all homeless people to leave the city immediately. Trump also went after Mayor Muriel Bowser, saying she has been given many chances and the crime numbers get worse and the city only gets dirtier and less attractive. Never mind the fact that violent crime in D.C. has actually been on a steep decline since 2023, according to the Metropolitan Police Department. In fact, it's dropped 26% just this year so far when compared to 2024.
I wonder how much of this crime actually gets not broadcasted, but how much of it actually gets, I can't think of the word right now, but how they go about it. Kind of like in Chicago, how much of the crime gets reported in the city. That's what I'm trying to say. We know how Chicago, they weren't actually reporting their crime, trying to say that crime was down, but we know that was a lie. They know that the capital murder of the U.S. But I just wonder.
Here's how the D.C. mayor responded to Trump this morning.
This is what I know. We are not experiencing a crime spike. One reason I wanted to be here today is to let people know that their nation's capital is among the most beautiful and best cities in the world. We have experienced rises in tourism compared to before the pandemic. So people are coming to our capital, they're starting business in our capital, and they're raising families in our capital. And any comparison to a war-torn country is hyperbolic and false. We're going to keep talking to the president, working with his people on the issues that are high priority for him. Now, if the priority is to show force in an American city, we know he can do that here. But it won't be because there's a spike in crime.
And joining us now is Basil Smikle, MSNBC political analyst and professor of practice at Columbia School of Professional Studies and friend of the show, of course.
Thank you.
They all know you.
Good to be friends.
It's good to have you here tonight. So what are you bracing for with this 10 a.m. press conference from Trump? And what do you think the point of this focus on crime and homelessness in D.C. really is all about?
Well, let me answer that part of the question first. It just goes to Elise's point. During this Epstein era, there's a lot of scattershot, right? We're going to throw everything at the wall. He's coming after the Attorney General in New York, Tish James. So all of these big announcements.
For good reason. For good reason. We already know what Letitia James is out here doing. Same thing they're trying to go out to Adam Schiff for.
To me, are an attempt to kind of deflect attention away from some of the things that we should be focused on in this country, like Epstein, number one, but also the economy, the jobs reports, and so on and so forth. Another zoom out point. He does this with black mayors, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
He's going after Muriel Bowser. He's gone after the mayor of Baltimore, of Cleveland, right?
Funny thing, enough, Baltimore is the capital of fentanyl. There was actually a gentleman, I was just looking at a video about where he went and started actually doing interviews with people out there, how they do just go on the street and just interview people, you know, in fentanyl capital. I'm surprised he didn't say Brandon Johnson out there in Illinois and Chicago. Shocker.
A part of this bigger conversation he's trying to have about DEI or anti-DEI, and they're there, but they don't deserve the position that they're in, right? So this falls into that category and continues to pull on his thread because it's red meat for his base. But on the issue of homelessness itself, he's talked about this, about New York at one point, and it has the hallmark of Giuliani's criminalization of the poor and of homeless when he was mayor of New York City. So this targeting of urban areas, this targeting of urban centers, we are at a point in time we need to be talking about solutions, but not using the police as the tip of the spear to basically just go into these cities and moving people off the
Why wouldn't you use the military and the police? Why wouldn't you? We're not out here fighting wars right now. We're not invading other countries at the current moment. So why not use the military for another reason for the American people? We already use them on the border. We use them when Los Angeles got out of hand, or any of these cities get out of hand. So why can't we use them? What is the police here for? To serve and protect.
street
Lord.
without question as to where are they going to go afterwards.
I'm so glad that you brought the issue of race as a subtext to this conversation because for years, DC has been the target of these sorts of, we need to be in control, and that we as the federal government. Can you sort of break down for our audience how the demographic of DC's population, particularly now with a leader who happens to be a black woman at the helm, plays for a ripe and fertile ground for this sort of discussion to go further than it has in previous years?
I always remember a comment that Dave Chappelle actually made.
There's many. Oh, excuse me. Let me get my camera back on real quick. There's many versions of black fatigue. There's the N-word niggas. That's that black fatigue. Perfect example, Sexy Red. And then this is the other black fatigue where these black people always got to bring race into it. It's not about race. It's about if you're competent enough for the job, quite honestly. That's all it comes down to.
Because he's like, there's statistically no poor people in DC, but white people. No poor white people in DC. I don't know how true that is. But he was making the point, though, that with everything that, for all of the culture that DC has, for all of its history, most of the white residents that you see there are somehow connected to federal government, somehow, connected to the industry of the politics of DC, and are therefore doing pretty well. But if you look at the rest of DC, yes, you've got a burgeoning sort of black middle class, but it also, there's a community that is very rich in culture, and there are many points at which that culture is being attacked. Not just by people sort of moving there, because there are a lot of conversation about gentrification, but there's also this question of whether or not the federal government should sort of impose itself on the people and the culture of that city, the people in the culture, the people who've made it such a strong American city. And so this is a conversation that's taken place for quite some time, but it's a conversation I'm glad to see the mayor pushing back on so strongly.
So what does this look like if you have, last night, 450, let me get this correct, federal officers were deployed to the streets of Washington. It's not a big city, Washington, D.C. That's a pretty significant increase in, boots on the ground, so to speak. How does this play out, and what is the timeline for this deployment? Well,
and you all talked about this a bit, it's the theater of it, right?
Yes.
These individuals, this law enforcement in force on an American street. We talked about that a bit in New York when there were questions about crime in the subways, and you started to see National Guard members in.
Yes. There's been plenty of crime in the subways in New York. There was a lady who got lit on fire by illegal, and he sat and watched. Got it all on recording. And then a gentleman who had to choke out the black guy who was threatening people, talking about he was going to kill him and stuff. And we know he beat the case because it was all in self-defense. We know all about the crime in the subways in New York. We know how they get down in there. No, let's not play dumb. Let's not play dumb.
Subway stations. There are a lot of folks that felt comfortable about that, but others that said, why are we doing this, right? Because why should we have this kind of show of force? But if you take a city like Washington, D.C., that is smaller, and you start having folks with shotguns.
I think the place that's the capital that it has the most federal workers and where the president spends majority of his time, you will want that place to look pristine. You want to look excellent. You want it to be the golden standard for everything around. You would want homeless and crime out of there. 100%. They should be the golden standard. Washington, D.C. Why are we shocked? Why are we shocked?
or automatic rifles in their streets. What is the point of that if not to show force at a point where crime is down and you don't need to show force in that way? So there's a theater that I think he's trying to create to, again, deflect attention, to scare people, right? Because we see that with ICE as well and what he does with ICE. To scare people and to engage in what
So there's not just a bunch of illegals in the United States. Okay, but all right.
a friend of mine called anticipatory obedience. In anticipation of me showing force or inserting my will, you're going to behave.
Advanced compliance.
Right.
Compliance before the demand.
That's right.
I think one of the most important things about this is what happens in other American cities if this works here? If this can be done here, where you have other American cities that have high populations of unhoused people, what sort of precedent does this create in terms of how mayors will choose to deal with that? So this is such an important conversation.
Well, we've seen the sort of aggression toward the homeless and mentally ill populations in the U.S. Increase. Honestly, some Democrats are actually at fault for some of that dehumanization as well. But Basil, I mean, you and Charles have touched on this, but can you kind of spell out in stark terms, what does it mean for young Black families in D.C., young kids, or, young career professionals who are riding public transportation are going to come face to face with some of these officers with the guns you just described?
Yeah.
What does this mean for them?
They should feel protected. What do you mean? They should feel safe. They should be like, there's no crime going to happen because there's federal officers here who are willing to protect us because our president sent them out on the streets to actually do something for us. What do you mean? Unless these kids are baby kids and they acting ratchet and doing dumb stuff, then you're going to jail. So what are we talking about here? What are we actually talking about here?
I think about James Baldwin when he wrote, Notes from an Occupied Territory? That feeling that you have this law enforcement with this bold occupying force on your streets. What does that say? What message does that send to a little kid? I was talking to somebody earlier today about
the streets are safe.
I've never been in Central Park. Why haven't I been in Central Park? Because of the now exonerated 5 and the atmosphere.
And you work at Columbia.
I know, but that atmosphere. Yeah. But I'm their same age, and the atmosphere in the city around that time when you had the media, the elected officials, including the mayor, Koch at the time, and the police department coming down on young Black boys and basically saying, this part of the city is ours, you're not supposed to be here.
Well, you missed one name that was coming down on young Black boys at that time, Donald Trump.
And Donald Trump, right. And what's interesting is all of this was happening even without his ad in the paper calling for those young men to be executed. So there was sort of a whole establishment around instilling fear, not just in white New Yorkers, but in Black New Yorkers, particularly young Black men, to say these spaces are off limits to you. So I'm saying all of that to say that that is me reacting to something that I felt back when I was 17, 18 years old. So now you have these law enforcement officers with these very powerful rifles potentially walking through the streets of DC. What message are you sending to the young Black men in particular, but everybody? What are you sending to young people in those streets today?
Very interesting. I would have loved to see how this level of vigilance would have played out if we saw it at the same time on January 6th, but that's another conversation.
I haven't heard a lot about January 6th. Who would have thought that would have brought it up again? But it doesn't really matter. All right. So in 2024, Washington, D.C. had the 4th highest homicide rate among major U.S. cities with 27.3 homicides per 100,000 residents. This rate is significantly higher than other large cities like New York and Atlanta. Although they're correct on the stats, it did show that crime was going down, but still, they're in the top 4 for homicide, top five, and they're number 4 for homicide rate. So, yeah, it's going down, but still, it's the capital. It should be the golden standard to show that we do not put up with crime. We don't tolerate that bull. Let's go over to the homeless. So, what are the top 3 states for homeless? But these are the top 10 most homeless states. California, We know how that's going when they are supposed to be getting rid of all the homeless situations, but they took the money. Gavin Newsom, whoever else he gave it to. New York, we already know how New York is, cray cray. Washington, significantly lower than these two, but still nasty. Florida, Massachusetts, Texas, Illinois, and Oregon. This is sad to see. We really have to figure out something to help out our homeless population. We really do. In the states like Seattle and Baltimore, who gives the homeless needles to be able to do their drugs safely, we gotta stop that. We gotta revoke that crap. That's diabolical. That's nasty. We can't have that. In Washington, D.C., the homeless population currently includes 3,782 single individuals and 1,356 adults and children and 440 family households. Approximately 798 of these individuals are living unsheltered, meaning they are on the streets. We really need to start building facilities that are not for illegals, but for our homeless people. And definitely, these 3,782, I bet 1,500, maybe a little bit more, are veterans. We really have to start helping out our veterans. Once again, our homeless veterans. We got to get them off the streets. Everybody, we got to get them off the streets. We got to find a way to start making the U.S. great again. Quite honestly, it's sad what we're seeing out here. We're just letting people out here just die and become homeless. We got to figure out a living wage as well. Washington, D.C. has one of the largest homeless populations in the nation. 16.6% of residents in D.C. live in poverty. That sucks. Homeless in D.C. is 2 times the national average, which would make California and New York 6 times the average, which is that's diabolical work. And then 9.3 persons for every 1,000 residents in the district are homeless. Pretty much 9. For every 1,000 person, there's 9 homeless people. This is why Trump is doing this. I hope he figures out a way to get them into a better situation, not just push them out and then make them homeless on the outskirts of DC. But at least we try to figure out something where we can start facilitating the homeless, getting the drugs off the street. Of course, that's one thing. And definitely the crime. We don't want to see somebody like Big Boss getting his ass beat, trying to protect a woman. We want to protect our women, right? Well, we got to stop this crime. We have to stop this crime. We have to. We're fighting too many battles right now. From the liberals to the illegals to the crime, and the Democrats. So it's just so many battles that the Republicans are fighting right now. We're winning at every margin outside of the Epstein files. That's the only thing that we've lost on, quite honestly. But quite honestly, we have bigger fish to fry. And I do want to see people go to jail for the Epstein files. I want to see many people. Diddling kids is disgusting. You should be sent to the guillotine, in my personal opinion. Alright, this is Big Fish here with another reaction video. Go down to the comment section, hit the like, hit the subscribe. Thank you. Peace.